Okay, sorry about that, folks. We had a,
All right.
not we, I had a computer glitch. Wasn't really a glitch. I just ran out of space on my computer, so I had to offload some big files, but we're rolling again. Joe, you okay? Still hanging in
Doing
there?
great. Yeah, doing great.
Awesome. So I have no idea where we were. I should have written something down as to what we were talking about right before
Like
the
show notes.
show notes. Yeah, I have
Oh yeah.
questions, but no show notes.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we're talking about all kinds of stuff, baiting, pros and
Yeah.
cons, primitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we had left off, but
How have we done on the questions thus far?
uh yeah, we got through most of them. Yep. Yeah, what's oh no, I know what we were talking about filming hunts. So we're talking about hunting from the ground and what are your plans for next season? Unless you come down, and hunt pigs or something, but for deer season next year, do you think you're going to film some hunts or
Frizz. Hold on. It's freezing.
you want me to pause it?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Right. That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah. It's you were cutting in and out for a minute. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. Now we're good. Are you there?
Okay, I was going to say, do you have any plans to film deer hunts next fall?
Yeah. Yep. And that's something that we were touching on a little bit. I was trying to get into some was struggling with um, trying to self film right and have the angles right. And then I had, if I want to, and what I mean by that, like making buckskin clothes, the stone point thing, I was trying to do it like as all the way as I could.
Right.
And self filming that is really, really, really tough. Right. That's my heat pump. I'm sure you can hear it in the background. But
Yep.
Dude, self filming that is crazy, right? And so it's also fairly new to me. Like people that have looked at the channel have looked at some of that stuff. Most of it, for me, the YouTube thing is kind of new. Like I've been into the skills, I've been into the stuff, but as far as actually filming it and going out and like, I want to try to capture this, and then I want to try to capture it in a way that like says, okay, all right, this is this dude's video, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, man. It's tough.
Very
I have
tough.
major kudos to you guys that have done it, and I know you've filmed stuff for Hunt Primitive, and you've done stuff with your own clients. You're way further ahead in that than where I'm at. I still struggle with the cameras and the settings and like trying to decode a GoPro for me was like just not something I was used to at all.
Yep, I hear you. I think a handy cam's a lot easier, but
Right.
that's just me, and I think it shoots better footage. You can zoom in and out. Personal preference. I know Ryan likes GoPros a lot, but I like it like maybe as a second angle, but not as a primary camera. But
right.
I like to be able to see on the screen easily see on the screen what I'm actually trying to capture, and without a viewfinder, a decent viewfinder, it's hard to do that. Really hard.
Right. Yeah. Yes, it is. And trying to like that was what I struggled with in the one with processing the deer legs, and it's also like trying to do it as contextually as possible and trying to wear the skin clothes, which I have no hair on clothes except for maybe some of the coyote stuff that I had. So that's all stuff that's happening now. Like that's all stuff that I'm doing now, and I'm filming some of it. A lot of it I'm not. A lot of it I'm just doing as far as like the hide tanning end of things goes. I will do something with like I showed a little bit of the sewing kit stuff. I'll get a lot more into that. Like, the stuff that I never even touched on that. Like when we were in the gathering, that stuff that I wore there, like the buckskin clothes in that. I tanned those mostly abo. I think for a couple of them, I probably did use, I may not have used ashes for everything. Like I may have used drain cleaner on like one or two, but then as far as like scraping them, fleshing them, I tried to stick with it like as close as I possibly could. And then when I sewed them, I mean, every bit of that is sewed with an antler awl and
Wow.
buckskin lacing that I cut. And it's just so I didn't film any of that, man. If you
That's
go back and
legit.
look through
That's
the,
like legit. Too bad you didn't film
yeah,
it.
like
People
when I
just direct
smoked it,
set
there's
you
stuff if you
film.
if people are kind of like, who's this dude that just rolled in? But like, if you go back and stuff that I was active in, like the Hunt Primitive Tribe Facebook page, I
Yeah.
was putting a lot of stuff up in there at one point in time. Like there's one that's there somewhere where I made a feather into a paintbrush and I'm using hide glue and gluing two hides together. And then I go out and I'm smoking it after that. Or I did one where I think my daughter was in part of it, where we did kind of an experiment in the yard where we took a hide and we put the solution with the ashes in it and actually did it in the ground.
Oh,
Like instead
wow.
of having a container, which I also have a video plan to do one. How much do you give away? I don't know, because somebody who also do it has probably done it or will do it, but I'm actually going to do one where I tan hides inside of another hide.
Oh,
Like
wow.
as far as the wet, because I do a lot of wet scraping.
Mhm.
So I'll soak it in the alkaline solution and then put, ashes and water and then bring it out. But I mean, dude, you're right. You're here now. It is frigid. Like I've got hides out there to work on. Some of them are wet salted. Some of them are just out there, in the
Wow.
shed right now. And it's so cold. Like everything's frozen. And when I did the original films, like cutting the tree and stuff and all that, and people were like, man, that's brutal. I'm like, dude, it was filmed for 30 minutes and be so cold that you come back inside and you're like, it just is giving me the most massive respect for the people that lived here and got through all that, because it's incredible, man. Like in the winters here, they're hard, but they're not like, I mean, they're not Canada harsh. They're not, you had people living with totally primitive technology clear up into the Arctic, man. And it's
Yeah,
amazing.
incredible.
It's
Yeah,
unbelievable to me.
the video
Unbelievable.
the video you were talking about with cutting down the tree with the stone axe,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
it's fast. There's just one version of it, right? It's real quick, right? It's short because you
No, I
see the
have that one. And then,
another one.
so that was a hackberry one. And if you're looking at that one close enough, the handle breaks.
Oh,
And then there was a lot of editing in the stone, how to make a bow with stone tools.
yeah.
That one also, I cut down an oak that was in my yard. And I'm like, man, if I'm going to tackle another one ever again, I'm probably not doing oak again, because it's
No.
just, especially for that time of year, it's brutal.
And
Dude, it took a
how long did
chip out
that
of the
take?
axe.
How long did that
Oh,
take?
days.
Days. Yeah.
Like when it seems like it's like, oh, this dude's hanging out and oh, now he's like pulling it down. Realistically, I had a full, um, I know that the axe blade had a significant chip out of it from like side slapping and
Yeah.
twisting into the cut. And so it went, once it chipped, then I had to regrind it. And I probably should have shown like, and I get where people were like, dude, have it be a little bit more laid back. I think I was just so like going into it. I was trying to make it more of this like artistic thing. And I wanted it to be not like polished, but like I wasn't showing all of that. And I
Yeah.
didn't want people being like, why would you ever do that if it's this time consuming and if it's this or it's this? So the way, and I think that I'm going through the same thing with the deer hunting. Like it's so incredibly hard, just
Yeah.
like cutting a tree, that like the average watcher is just going to be like, this guy's a moron, and move on and just have the assumption that you walk out in the woods and you shoot a deer. And like, just, I mean, trying to do it in the context that anybody that's bow hunting is trying to do it, it's really hard. And then trying to get it all to come together. And that stuff I've bounced off of a lot of other bow hunters, and just I'm trying to figure it out for myself. Because who do you go to and say, dude, I want to go out on a hunt in buckskin clothing and not get busted by a deer on the ground? And I've had a couple really, really close calls, and a couple of those have been on camera, and I've never released them, and I probably won't. And some people would be like, oh, that's cool. But dude, what sucks is that like 90% of people are going to be like, oh, you missed that deer. Or you shot over it. But like, it's also, going to be a high of 40 and I'm wearing buckskin with no wool under it and nobody's going to care. Like I'm doing that for me, but nobody's going to care. And people are going to be like, you're a moron. As soon as Indians had access to wool, they wore it. You're right. I get that. So when you ask me like what I was aiming for, what I'm really trying to do is I would really love to have a full abo all the way, full abo kit that's very efficient, that functions very well, that I know is going to be great. And that oak bow that I made in that video, it's a good bow. It's not a bad bow. It's a decent bow. I've got a couple other locust bows that I thought were really good, and I kind of put myself through the paces on them. And a lot of that was with contact with Ryan. You have to reassess yourself, especially when you get to shared company with a dude like that. You get to kind of think like, oh, maybe I'm at a level, right? And so I have no problem saying that, like, I had to really reassess some of my equipment, even stuff that I'm like, oh, I've killed deer with this, with steel points. A guy like that has so much experience that's all I want to do is listen, right? I just want to call him and listen and be like, what little thing can I pick up? And it's implementing all those things that, man, it's been a 4-year journey. It's been 4 years of saying like, how can I wrap this whole bundle? And when it finally happens, I will have the time when like it fully comes together and everybody, from an outside perspective, people are going to go, what's the problem? Why didn't you kill one this year? But, guys that bow hunt get it. Guys that hunt with modern recurves that have sight pins on them have hard time getting deer down.
Oh yeah. It's so
guys
hard.
that hunt with,
even compound,
it's
even
hard,
compound is
dude.
no joke. I mean, it's bow hunting.
It's a lot of work. It's hard. And then I was hunting from a tree stand and I had shots, I've definitely been able to close the gap and I've had shots and I've had a couple of flat out misses that were my fault. I had a couple of just, and so then I got kind of in my own head, and that was a great thing about getting to go down to Florida now twice and really look at a lot of stuff that like, man, this stuff is proven out. If I lived in a culture where that was around me a lot more, I would just know. But now it's just guys having to refigure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan's amazing at that. And then just his willingness to share, you kind of just reassess yourself and you start thinking like, man, I've got a long way to go.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
I would love to go.
So many
when
more
are we
skills
hog hunting?
compared to the average. You have so many more skills and knowledge compared to the average bow hunter, Okay. Yep. A little glitch there, but yep. I'll just leave the video off. That might be part of the problem. But
okay.
Yeah,
it's humbling, man. It's humbling. Hunting grounds you, right? Not like, oh, you're grounded. Hunting is so humbling at times.
Yeah,
it really is.
I always talk about fly fishing because I've done it my whole life, but I've also bow hunted my whole life. And I'm kind of obsessed with both. But fishing has always come fairly easy to me. Not easy. There was a learning curve, but now I feel like I can guide people and just at the end of the day I can go out. I mean, literally at the end of the day, not figuratively, but I can catch fish that maybe my client couldn't catch the whole day, and I can go out and literally within 5 minutes catch a fish. But bow hunting is always difficult for me, so I guess
it's tough.
It's very, very tough after doing it for 40 years plus. It's still very difficult, and that's why I'm still like I could live to be 300 years old and still be obsessed with this. I think it just I was a guest on a podcast, Traditional Outdoors, and they were surprised when they asked me like, what would you choose if you had to choose one, hunting or fishing? I said it was like, no, hunting for sure, because it's just so much harder.
Oh, right.
The puzzle is just so much more complex, and
there's just so much that can happen. There really is. It's just like, I mean, anything can happen, right? when
Yeah.
you're setting the stage and you think like you have all the preparations made in your mind, but realistically, yeah, in a real hunting situation, like anything can happen,
Yep. For
which is
sure.
great. That's what keeps it so fun. Like it
Exactly.
keeps it fresh. You never know what the animal's going to
Every
do.
day is different, you know?
It is. You can come in from a completely different area. You know, you can, yeah, you can, or you can have like where everything just comes together. It's amazing when that happens.
Hmm.
And
It does, but
it's like, that's like not 97% of the time. 97% of the time, none of it is like, going according to plan. You just have to
yeah.
roll with it.
Yeah.
And guys, a lot of that comes with experience, just the experience of getting out there and doing it. And it seems like, it kind of went through a lull and then guys are getting back into it more. It seems
Hmm.
like it goes in kind of like phases. Like when I was building self bows starting out, you didn't see any self bows. And now you can go to a bow shoot and you can see a ton of self bows. But
Hmm.
I took a long hiatus. I didn't build any bows or anything for a long time. And it's just phases of life that you get in when you have time to do it or when you don't. And it's a cool thing to see and be a part of. I think it's a cool outlet like YouTube, or
Yes.
like getting to do a podcast. I never thought in a million years. Like I said, I made some of that content, put stuff out there, and it's just such a neat thing that people can respond to it, whether it's negative or positive, just a response.
Yes.
And then I think that you know people are asking a lot now, like my family and stuff, and nobody knows anybody around here that's like a content creator. And people are asking now, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? And it's like, it's still the plan. It's the same plan that it has been,
Yeah.
and nothing's really changed, and I still haven't done it. And people are like, what is it? And I'm like, well, the plan was to build a full abo kit and take a white-tailed deer with, then people were like, well, why were you hunting with it from a tree stand? And I'm like, well, I kind of thought at first that was the only way I was going to be able to get it done. And then now moving into this next year, and I've hunted from ground blinds a lot. I've hunted from just the ground. I mean, the deer I shot 2 days ago, given it was a muzzle loader, was just from the ground, no blind, no anything.
Hmm.
And I'm just still trying to learn the areas, that I hunt, and trying to figure out how to incorporate bait into that. And it's the whole nine, man. It's the whole package. It's the whole thing. It's like, if you're a compound guy or whatever, you're like, what camo am I going to do this year? What broadheads am I going to do? I'm constantly also rethinking that. Am I going to
Yes.
try to use this type of point? Am I going to try to use this type of shaft? Am I going to try to, am I going to try to make a whole new bow? That's been a big thing. That was a big thing. Like, am I going to use this locust bow? What does it shoot? And then getting into, buying a chronograph and a scale and a grain scale and all that stuff. That was something that I had a knowledge of, but I never really did. And the longer it went, the longer I'm like, man, we kind of need data off some of this stuff. It's just one thing for me to sit here and say like, oh yeah, this bow, and I'd kill deer with it, whatever else. But people want it. People want to know, right? People want to know, what does that bow pull? And I can say, I don't know. And then people are just like, well, that's dumb. You know what I mean? If you kill deer with it and it's heavy enough and you shoot enough bows,
Heavy enough.
it's over. Yeah, it's heavy enough. But I was that guy for the longest time that, like, now I care a lot more because people have taken an interest in me. And I just appreciate that so much, that there's so many questions that I've had people ask that I don't have any idea. And I'm like, thanks for asking, man. I'd like to look into that,
Showing interest.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have definitely piqued my interest. And people ask me about artifacts and stuff like that too. Like, I had a conversation with a dude who was laying tile. Every day of my life, I do wood flooring. That's what I do for a living. And this dude was a tile layer, but he was super into artifacts. And he's like, hey, my nephew was talking about you doing this YouTube thing. And I'm like, I live such a separate life, away from,
Yeah.
I live in a cornfield, middle of nowhere, and I sand floors. And I very rarely talk to my clientele at all about it unless they seem like they're into hunting. And so then for this guy to like, oh man, this and this and this for this area, and you should try to get stone over here, and he was just a wealth of knowledge. And people just assume that, like, if you're doing one thing, they think that like, oh, you must already know all this. And I'm like, no, man, I don't. I learned something from everybody I talk to. Every single person's got a piece of that puzzle to add.
Mhm.
They've got more experience than you in something.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think that's such a cool thing about that. Like, we're all together in it mentality. It puts pressure on you to create content and to be successful, right? Every time. And for people to be like, well, maybe this one, what if this one doesn't get 1 million views? I'm like, well, dude, I have one where I'm shooting squirrels and I'm actually killing stuff. And it didn't even get close to
Yeah.
peaking on that. And I would
And
think, I
go
thought, dude,
figure, you can't imagine,
right,
can't figure out
right.
what people are going to want to see and what's going to,
Yeah. And you have, who knows,
who knows? You just got to put out content and see what happens and try to share
I had
what
a
you love
dude,
to do.
right. And the guy's like, what rifle did you kill it with? And this and this and this and this about the deer leg video. I'm like, that has nothing to do with the context of
Oh,
the
like for
video at
you.
all, man.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, none of that matters. And then somebody's like, well, did you use the bone points and go kill something? I'm like, not yet. Maybe at some point. I'm still thinking about it. Like, I have 2 kids and I have a wife and I own a business, and that takes up a lot of time. The content creation stuff for me is something that, like, honestly, probably at least over 50% of what I do with it, I never film. It's probably more than that. A
Yeah.
lot of it I never film. And people
90,
would
98%
90,
is 50%.
97% of the time. Right. And it's like, and maybe people would like some more of that. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't, like I said before, I don't know. I don't know what people want to see. I was amazed, at the deer cutting up a deer leg thing, that it like boomed. And it
Yeah.
could have been a one-hit wonder thing. It could have been a one-off thing. There's people that genuinely are interested in the channel and want to learn some things. I know some things and have those to share. And I'm still on the learning journey, man. We all
Yeah,
are.
we all are.
And
I
it's
think
tough.
at the end of the
It's
day,
just
you have to create content that you enjoy
right,
and enjoy
right,
doing, as opposed to
right,
just, unless it's truly just like your channel is all about teaching people, that's fine too. But
right,
I always feel like I'm gonna film the things that I like to do, and some people like it, some people won't, and who knows what'll hit and what won't. It doesn't even
right,
matter. It's because I'm still
right,
gonna do it anyway, and I enjoy the filming part of it. So
right.
it's not like
And
I'm
it's
not
kind of
gonna
hard.
film.
And
I
like finding your niche. I'm still
yeah.
in such an early phase of that people are like, are you a survivalist? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
People are like, are you a survival
They try to
instructor?
put you
And I'm like,
in a
no.
corner and the
Right. And they just kind of like get all these different angles with it. And even this conversation, it clarifies a lot of it up for me. I'm like, I'm a dude that likes to hunt white-tailed deer because that's where I live. I'm passionate about that. I love all the primitive stuff wrapped into one thing. And I just had a vision for what I wanted to do, which was try to create a pre-contact white-tailed deer hunt. If somebody's like, what are you into trying to do? That's it. And I'm still trying to do it. It's
yeah.
still a work in progress. And I learned so much every time that something doesn't come together or doesn't work out, or like, that's what gets me excited. Right. I'm like, oh, I could try this and I haven't done that yet. And there's so many other people like, what about this or what about whatever. And I messed around with like some fire stuff or doing this or doing whatever. I'm not a survival instructor. Like somebody like Jason, who we're talking about, that
Oh
dude's a
yeah.
survivalist.
He
Like
is a
that dude
survivalist.
knows
Absolutely.
100% out of anybody that I've met. Like I had a conversation about him with that today. I'm like, dude, if I had to put my life on the line with somebody, like I feel like I trust your knowledge that much.
And you're talking about
Right.
Jason Smith from
Yeah. Yep.
Hobo Forge
Yep.
Survival. Yeah, he's
Absolutely.
as good as it gets.
Yeah. That dude's, yeah, he's on a whole level. And so like, I've put some content out there, and we were just kind of joking about it, because we met up and I had met him before. And we're hanging out, not to divulge too much, but he was and it was joking, and I totally get it. He's kind of like, dude, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I know, right? I know, right? And he's
I
like,
feel
what are
like
you
that
doing?
too. Trust me.
He didn't even have any idea that I even had any content, right? That anything was out there. I'm like, man, I still have so much to learn. But he's such a cool guy and so laid back, and like, yeah, he'd just let you sit there and bounce ideas off of him. And
Yeah.
he's a guy that can clarify a lot of it up for you, because then you have people, are you going to go do it? Would you go do alone? Would you go do this? I'm like, dude, I've never done anything like that in my life. Like my long-term camping experience is low. I don't have that much fishing experience. I live in a landlocked place. I'm close to the Great Lakes, but like it was never a big deal to anybody that I was around. So it's just like if you're realistic with yourself, you see where you need improvement. I think people run into so many problems, especially with this like shroud of the internet, that they get on and just troll. And they're like, well, I know this and I know this and I know this. And I kind of approach it like, this is my goal with what I'm trying to do with this. And there's so much that I don't know.
Same
and
here.
Yeah, there's like a lot of dudes that it's like this big ego trip thing. And for me, it's like, and that can lead to conflict and a lot of other things. And I'm like, man, all I want to do is be very humble about whatever. Like 1 million views to me was still, so when my brother called and said it was 350,000, I still like it still doesn't really sink in. And then people are like, are you ever going to do it again? And then I feel this just kind of weird pressure, with it, not to sound weird about it, but it's like, dude, I never expected it. It was never part of a plan. And it absolutely may never happen again. I don't know.
Yeah, some of
I have
my
no
best
idea.
videos have the fewest views. It's like,
Yeah.
you're kidding me.
I was like, I cut
amazing.
a tree down, like carved out an axe, cut a tree down, and spent hours in the cold. And I'm like, maybe people like this from like a revenant angle. Like, dude, I'm struggling out here. Like when my hands are red and hurt, like I'm just trying to tie into that. Like, this is the kind of stuff maybe, like our ancestors did, but I'm doing it for entertainment. Somebody's like, this dude's chopping a tree down in buckskin in the snow. And I did that whole thing. And I'm like, this is going to be crazy. Like I've never seen this before, right? Like I'm pushing it as far as I feel like I can push it. It got like 53,000 views. I cut the leg off of, you heard it here first. I cut the leg off of a roadkill deer. There's a roadkill deer a mile from my parents' house on the way home from a floor estimate. Rifle guy, wherever you're at. No, I didn't shoot it with a bow. If I had, I would be super stoked about it.
Roadkill. Nothing
right. I cut the leg off of a roadkill deer and I got 2.5 million views. Thank you, YouTube.
And counting.
Thank you, whatever algorithm that tripped, and thank you that I didn't get age restricted. I just showed it, and it was kind of funny because my wife was like, she's super cool and super supportive. My basement is just full of animal parts, like, and just crazy stuff and sinew and hides and whatever else. And she's super cool. But I filmed that, and she's like, I really don't think, because I let her watch through part of it. She's like, I really don't think you should put this out. And then people are like, dude, why aren't you showing your face? Right? Because there's a lot of it that's kind of like, for most of it, not now, but like at that point in time, it was kind of just a little weird, like in trying to get different angles. She's like, you never show your face. And I'm like, my wife was like, you're going to bring shame on us. If you have a 3-minute video of you just hacking up a roadkill leg in the yard, nobody's going to care. And everybody in the family is going to think you're like Ed Gein. Right. And people latched onto it. I'm like, that's crazy. That's just crazy. Because there's people out there, I'm telling you, man, that put out stuff that's so much better than anything I've even come close to.
There's something about that, the way you edited it and broke it down into part, like,
right,
for lack of a better term, broke it down into parts, like the editing. I'm talking about the editing, not literally the deer parts, but there's something really, I mean, the music to me is weird, but I kind of get that too, but because it's kind of incongruous with what's, techno versus primitive. But
that was the whole thing.
Yeah,
you got it, dude. You got it. You got it. Most people are like, I hate it. I'm like, dude, I'm sitting out here with a GoPro and a deer leg. Like, I don't know what to do with the rest of it. But yeah, tying it into the whole thing, I actually would like to do, and if I had better camera equipment, that's the thing too. Will I invest in that? I don't know. I would love to do it even more, like from an artistic angle. And I don't know if that's what people would respond to. A lot of people on the internet want like bushcraft. They want bushcraft videos. Right. I'm not a hardcore bushcrafter. I don't go out for like weeks at a time. I don't do that stuff. And like a lot of that's what people romanticize in their mind, and like that's what they want to identify with. I have a handful of skills. I can do certain things, right? I won't take that away from myself. I won't shortchange myself on that. Like, and those are the areas that I've focused on. And like, I've been really blessed in a lot of that. And it's been a cool experience. It's been a wild ride, man. Like for my mom to go on and watch that, like, she's like, this is not for me at all. Right. And I'm going, Mom, you and like 90% of everybody else I've talked to, but obviously something tripped.
Yes.
You know, I'm not naive to that, that something with it works. A lot of people don't like the music. A lot of people don't like the gore. A lot of people don't like it, but that also, I think, has something to do with tripping the algorithm. It's like what was that band? KDFM or whatever. Remember that? Like there's like techno and slaughterhouses. And some people, they were huge, and people were like, I hate it. It's just, you're getting, if I can pull anybody
any
into
kind of
feedback,
I think you know, the algorithm changes, of course, but just getting
it's so weird.
Comments.
It's such a weird thing to get that many play. I mean, so many comments in like languages that I don't recognize at all. I have no idea. And like, just trying to wrap my mind around that. It's hilarious. Like at the end of the day, it's crazy. It's such a crazy world that we live in, that like random stuff like that happens. And then people like are going to do one of two things, right? Either people put you on a pedestal and expect way more and expect it to be better and better and better and better in whatever way that is, whether it's instructive or even weirder or even gorier or even techno-ier, or they just want to tear you down. Like, and I've had both of that. I'm like, this was never my plan. They're like, well, you put this stuff out here, you murderer. I'm like, it was already dead. But then how much credibility do I lose and sit there and say it's roadkill? And somebody, you know, if you release that, like we're talking about it now, it's just like, if I turn around and release stuff where I'm hunting with a shotgun or I'm hunting with a cap lock, I still hunt, you know, I'm still hunting. I'm still killing stuff. People, oh, you didn't fill your tags with a bow. Okay. Neither did my buddy with a compound.
Yeah.
Right. It's hunting is hunting. I love it. Regardless.
I consider myself a generalist. I mean, I'm mostly into traditional, a little bit into primitive, but I'll take out a rifle. I love black powder. I'll take a slingshot if I can shoot a squirrel with it. You know what I mean? I'm just I like a little bit of everything.
Right. And my vision for being a purist in this endeavor is not at all because I'm a purist. Right. And people have had that attitude too, like, oh, this guy's doing nothing but studying Native American skills and doing this and doing this. The whole thing was so simple that it's crazy. And like even the deer leg thing never really tied into it, other than making a sewing kit that I was going to show doing hair-on moccasins with later. And like, that's still coming. Like if somebody's like, oh, what's something we can look forward to? I don't know how excited you guys can get about footwear. Like, I got it. I got 3 or 4 books and we can talk about it. And like,
how about ladies footwear, maybe?
There we go. Yeah. Like how far into it can we get? I don't know, man. There's just so much to learn. That's what intrigues me. Like, dude, people lived right where I'm standing, and we find their stuff all the time, and they had nothing that we have right now. They had nothing. That's the drive. And people are like, well, you don't know this, and you don't know this. They're exactly right. Every time they say that, I don't. And somebody else does. Somebody who's an anthropology major or an archaeologist or whatever else. Man, I never went to college for any of that. I never finished college for anything. Right. And I'm realistic about that. There's so much that I don't know, but I'm willing to sit there and say, I don't know this, or I haven't done this.
Well, that's the allure. That's the allure though. Like that's, we're just scratching the surface, where life is about learning. And
I'm open to people's, I'm 100% open to people's video ideas, right? Of like, hey, you should try to get into this or try to do this. And I'm 100% open to finding other people, right? If other people are into it, like somebody that does pottery, I have like nil experience with primitive pottery. Somebody that does this or does this, and people may like, oh, nobody's ever going to want to click on that. Whatever, man.
Who cares?
What fascinates me is that people were doing this and living a lifestyle pre all of it. And I know that I touched on like pre-Columbian contact, but what we get back to with the channel, like kind of wrapping this whole thing together, is this is all of us, dude. You know, when people
It
constantly
is.
are like, well, these are Native American skills, you stole it. I call bullshit, because
Oh,
we
me too.
all lived in the Stone Age.
We all did.
Across every
It predates
continent.
all that.
Every That's the one of the one things we have, one of the only things that we have, right? I don't want to come across harping as some kind of like social justice person or whatever. None of this is political. It's just incredibly ironic that I came out with content in a year that people would still jab about that and get butthurt. Like, oh,
Yeah.
these are Native American skills, dude.
They're not, they are, but it's not just theirs.
Yeah, yes and no. And I have to apply it here because I live in America.
Right.
You know, I live in Ohio. And so people are like, well, what do you look to? Well, yeah, I mean, by DNA, I have to identify as something else. I don't have yew trees in my yard. You know, so
Yeah.
if I'm going to build Stone Age European stuff, like I'm out of context because I'm not in location,
Yep.
right? I have to try to utilize what's here. And a lot of people, you know, almost look at that as like this crazy, like, I don't know how to misappropriation. That's what I would say. I was going to say like stolen valor, but like, I'm not claiming to be a Native American. I'm not claiming that I studied from a Native American. I had people in my family that talked about it. And if somebody wants to put that spin on it, that's on them.
That quote that I
Right.
love
So,
I think it's by Fred Bear. It's the history of mankind. No, the history of the bow and arrow is the history of mankind.
right.
It's not the
And
history of
like,
Native
and
Americans
why don't we
specifically. It's
touch
just
on that the
mankind.
oldest bows, why, you know,
Yeah.
why isn't it common knowledge that the oldest bows ever were pulled out of like a bog in Denmark?
Yeah.
Nobody thinks about that. I
Hmm.
mean, nobody thinks about when you talk about like Germanic cultures, right? Like something I can identify with. Almost everybody immediately is going to think like Roman conquest and Germany, if they're thinking, you know, back, or they're going to think like Vikings.
Hmm.
Nobody's thinking like thousands of years of Stone Age culture in Europe.
Before
When you
that.
think about like European archery, every single person's going to think of the English longbow
Right.
and like Agincourt or everything else. That's awesome. I mean, that's an
Yeah.
awesome example of it. But
But that's like
you
I
got,
said
I
earlier,
don't want
that's
to,
like day before yesterday stuff.
yeah, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, man. But like we're talking about the bow and arrow, and I'm sorry to anybody that gets butt hurt. That's not just a Native American thing. You guys
No.
don't get to own it. Sorry, the Mongolians took over the whole freaking known world with them. You know, nobody's saying
Yeah.
you don't go out and post a video of making a horn bow and you don't hear somebody be like, you stole that from us. Like, that's not what it's about, man. Everybody had it. I mean, pretty much everybody but the Australians had it. And
Right.
so I tried to kind of like get people to set some of that crazy, how much of that crap did we wallow through during 2020 of
Oh,
just
geez.
like, oh God, of just constant like this, and this way of thinking, dude. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not making any kind of claim about whatever. I'm not making excuses for myself either. I'm just like, man, this is part of your past, no matter what you are.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
And like, and I was kind of surprised by it, got a lot of response. I had no idea what kind of languages people were commenting in. I'm just some dude from a cornfield who like is interested in it and grew up. Dude, I live in such a rich, like, area for artifacts. I mean, a ton of stuff went on here. You know, you had a ton of stuff going on. I go to farmers' houses, dude, and like some of these like college majors would probably crap because I'll go to a farmer's house to work on his house, and he'll have a 5-gallon bucket full of artifacts just banging around on each other, chipping, breaking, and
They have a heart
most of those
attack.
dudes just they
Yeah.
don't give a shit, man. I
Yeah.
went to a dude's house and he had full intact, like pecked and grooved axes. And that was a
Wow.
big part of my inspiration. Like, man, I want to make some axes. I've seen a bunch of them out here. And I'm like, that's amazing that people got life done like that. And then for it to just be in a field of like, were they caching it? Like, how did this happen? Because it takes a lot of work to make something like that. How do you lose it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It makes you
I
wonder.
get like losing an arrowhead, but how the heck do you lose it? I don't know. Probably kids. Probably somebody's kids picked it up
Yeah.
and
Drop
walked
it out of
off
a
with it.
canoe or something. Who knows?
Dude, who knows? It's such a crazy. What's your next big thing you're getting into, dude? I mean, what's your next? You got a hunt coming up. What are you getting into next?
I've got Emra from Bow Hunting Soul. He's coming down to hunt
Mhm.
pigs in March. He's a great guy. I've actually never met him. I've been a guest on his show and vice versa, but
Right.
he's a traditional guy. So we're gonna try to get after the pigs, and I think it's gonna be, well, it will be turkey season too. Then when he comes down, so try to
Okay.
get him on a turkey. But
Is that like in the spring for you
yeah,
guys? You guys have like
March.
a spring turkey season?
Yep,
Yep. We're pretty
mid-March.
much the same here. Yeah, mid-March into April.
Yeah.
We get a turkey season. That was why I was amazed driving. Was it 589 coming up through Florida? I looked over and I'm like, what are all those birds? And
Oh
like
yeah.
here I would just assume it was geese. I've never seen turkeys like that.
Lots
Just
of
on the
turkey.
side of the highway. It's amazing, man.
Yeah,
It's amazing. I'm like, wow, this is such a different place to get to experience
it is.
such a cool thing.
Yeah, you need to come back down for sure.
Absolutely, 100%, man. I want to know when we're doing a hog hunt. That's what I
98%,
think that'd be great.
100%, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, we'll
We're
have to do it for sure.
97% sure that we'll get something set up.
All right.
You can see how incredibly unproficient I am with a fly rod.
Oh, I'll get you on those, on tarpon and snook
Dude,
too,
but
if
it'll
you
be a
want,
great
man.
time.
Just got to get
It'd
the
be a
fly in
great
the
time.
water.
I can do that.
Well,
I can probably
Joe,
wind up
you want
throwing
to mention your
myself in
channel?
by
We should
accident.
probably wrap it up. I've had you on here quite a while.
Yeah,
You want
yeah,
to mention your channel
yep,
again?
yeah. It's First Skills. Yeah, just search First Skills on YouTube. You'll
And
find me.
and do you have a Instagram too, or do you?
No, I don't. I should. I don't. And I don't have a Facebook page unless you're looking at my floor sanding stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's flooring restoring.
Primitive
Check it
floor
out.
sanding.
Yeah, yeah, right. We're hand scraping everything.
Yes.
Oh, that would be insane.
Time
No,
efficient.
but yeah, that's my day. That's my day job. If anybody's interested in that at all, it could be worth a peek.
Yeah.
I've got a ton of stuff with that through Facebook. It's a business that my wife and I run together, and
What's the
we
name
do a
of
bunch
it?
of them. It's flooring restoring.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, if you search for that on Facebook, you'll find our page, and there's a ton of like before and after stuff on there. You'd probably really like it.
And
It's cool if you're into
what part of
woodworking.
Ohio are
Yeah.
you in?
Okay, I live in Champaign County, Ohio. So
Okay.
I'm not too far from Dayton, if anybody's
Mhm.
familiar with Dayton.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, great talking to you again.
Yeah, man, it's been a
And,
blast.
have to have you come on again too, especially
I'm
after we just talk
97.
about what's that?
I'm 97% sure
We'll make it happen.
that I'm 100% sure that we're gonna make that happen.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Yeah,
Take care.
thank you very much. Thanks for having me.